Welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandy. This is Greg. On October 8th, 9th, and 10th, 2021, Propagandy played 3 sold-out shows in a row at Winnipeg's Park Theatre, which were their first shows in more than 2 years. Choke from Alberta opened all 3 shows as direct support. Weapons from Saskatchewan opened on Friday, and Mobina Galore opened the second and third shows on Saturday and Sunday night. Since starting this podcast, Mobina Galore from Winnipeg has come up over and over again in conversations with guests and friends of the band. And I began listening to Mobina Galore at the suggestion of Sulin Hago from Propagandy, and I have grown to absolutely love the band. Mobina Galore frequently soundtracks my running, and I am delighted to have seen Mobina open for Propagandy twice just a month ago as live music continues to become more of a reality. I wanted to get the story of the weekend from the perspective of Mobina Galore, and Jenna was gracious enough to pop on a call with me to tell me about the founding of Mobina Galore, working with John Paul Peters at Private Ear Recording, and returning to the stage as support for Propagandy. Check out Mobina Galore's music at mobinagalore.com, mobinagalore.bandcamp.com, and on Instagram and Twitter at Mobina Galore. Jenna, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandy, and today a podcast about Mobina Galore as well.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you here, and I'm wondering if we can just start off by having you sort of introduce yourself just a little bit to the listeners around the world who may not know you and your work. So who are you and what do you do?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Jenna, and I play in a band called Mobina Galore, based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We are a 2-piece punk band, somewhere in the punk world, at least. Drums and guitars. I play guitar and sing and do most of the songwriting within the band.
Sweet. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about my history of finding your band. So Keith and I started this podcast about Propagandy, and then what happened is we started discovering the deep well of cultural fabulousness that is Winnipeg. And your band was one of the discoveries that I made during the most intense periods of lockdown during the pandemic. And, you know, I wound up ordering some vinyl and a toque from you, which I still have and wear all the time and listen to. And so I'm just curious about what your experience was like as a band during those portions of lockdown while your band was asleep. Like, how were you spending time? What did you do to fill that year and a half? Like, tell me about those months of like total uncertainty and band inactivity.
Sure. And you know what? You put it well, band inactivity, because some bands were still finding ways to be very active in terms of online presence and live streaming and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, we just took a step back and just did other stuff, which led to us working more. Like, I got my first job.
Nice.
I got hired. I had an interview. It was like the first time that's happened in about 10 years. But yeah, we kind of just took a break. We bought a house. I think it was April 2020, when the whole world was like, oh, this is temporary, maybe, a few weeks or a month, blah, blah, blah. So we ended up buying a house kind of at the beginning of everything, which wasn't part of the plan, but occupied a good couple months of our lives. So that was something. We got a dog last summer. So it was just very non-band related stuff, but it was kind of refreshing because usually there's that pressure to keep releasing content and keep writing songs and keep playing shows and doing all this stuff. And I love all of that, but it was nice to not have to worry about, it feeling like work. We jam in our house, and we went probably 3 months without playing. And then played a couple shows, 2 shows last summer here in Winnipeg at the Park Theatre. And then again, didn't play for like 3 months. And it was weird, but it was just kind of nice. We sort of just took advantage of the fact that we had this extra time to do other stuff and just to, hang out. And we're used to hanging out 24/7. So it was, no big deal for us to be kind of stuck in our house together.
Yeah, the content pressure to release new content is something that I feel tremendously. So Keith and I started this show, and we've been cranking out episodes about Propagandy like nonstop now for like a year and a half. And right now we're kind of on like a little downtime breather so that we can kind of catch up on some other things in our life now that the world has reopened. Because doing a show at this pace has really become difficult whenever the world reopened, basically. But like now I'm like, oh my gosh, is our podcast going to become totally irrelevant? And even though we don't make any money from this, it's still like you really want to do a good job about those things. And like I was just really scared to kind of let it go for a little while. Did you feel anything like that? Or was it just like, we're good with this?
It was mostly we're good with this, but you can't help but always want to compare yourself to other artists and to be thinking, am I not doing enough? Am I being lazy? So, like those were for sure questions that I asked myself. But at the end of the day, it was like, if I wasn't in the mood to be playing music, then it's not a big deal because I knew it would come back. Right. I have so much admiration for people like you and other artists who were just full on like going hard with Patreon and like investing so much time and money for basically free live streams. Like we did a couple acoustic online streams.
Yeah.
That was kind of the extent of what we cared to do. We're like, we don't really want to play these acoustic things anymore. And we're not set up to be doing a full band live stream. And it would just seem like so much work for we weren't sure what the outcome was. So we kind of were just, I don't know, I guess a little lazy for lack of a better word, but I definitely have a lot of respect for some bands out there who just pushed through and just had themselves heard. But we just did it in other ways. Like we got new merch kind of partway through and just shipped out merch to people, and we're just chatting with people online and stuff like that. So we just found our own way to do it. And I don't know.
You
right way.
You deliver merch like personally in town, don't you?
I do. Yeah. It's some people will order and I'm like, hey, you live in Winnipeg. Why are you going to pay this preset, probably way too expensive shipping? Yeah. But yeah, people will just shoot me emails and drop off, pick up. It's fun. It's great. I don't know. It's something to do.
I saw that on your website and I was like, this is fabulous. Like to have Jenna just show up at your door with a couple of records and a shirt and be like, hey, how's it going? Let's chat for 10 minutes. Okay. Thanks for this. See you later. And it makes the experience so much more special. And then that person will remember that moment of getting those items like forever. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. I know that if my reading of Discogs is correct and is telling the truth, you might be in around the 10th year of being in a band, right?
This is true. And you know what? I think sometime in the last few months, I was putting all my records onto Discogs. I haven't finished yet though. And so of course I'm finding all the Mobina stuff on there.
Yeah.
And like finding our bio and all that kind of stuff. So I think I actually recently updated all that myself. So whatever's on there, I do believe to be the truth because it's from me. But yeah, we started the band around 2011. That was our first tour that we ever did, was 2011, like across Canada tour, which really across Canada is like Victoria to Montreal. East Coast is kind of its own little world. So yeah, that was our first tour. It was in 2011. So it's been 10 years now, which is crazy.
I'd love to know the specifics behind being a two-piece duo, because it's a rare setup for bands, especially in punk. And you think about like the iconic like White Stripes setup or something like that, or like Royal Blood, or like 68, that current duo that's like on tour in the hardcore world. But I'm just curious about your thoughts behind being a two-piece band, and what you think is kind of special about that, and the decision behind remaining a two-piece for the band.
For sure. So before Mobina, we were living in Fernie, British Columbia, and we were playing some shows with this other band that you can't find on the internet or anything like that anymore. But that's not true. There's one music video. If you deep dive, maybe you'll find it. But anyways, there's three of us. I played guitar. It was more like folk pop kind of stuff. I played acoustic, and we had a keyboard player, and it was the three of us. So still no bass player. And it was just fun. We just played shows around town. And then when our keyboard player just didn't really feel like playing shows anymore, it was just Marcia and myself. And so this would have been about 10 years ago. And I really wanted to just get more into electric and punk rock style. So we just wrote like two or three songs, I think. And we never really intended to have a bass player or to not have a bass player. It was just kind of something that happened. It was just the two of us playing. And then we just found ourselves super comfortable in that scenario and never meeting anyone who just naturally became part of the group. And I think that's kind of how it all ended up remaining that way, you know, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And now it's been so long that, you know, I have visions of being a 4-piece here and there. Like when we record, there's additional guitars and bass and etc. But the live show, I just really like the two of us. I like the side-by-side setup, even though it pisses off sound people so many times, but we stand our ground most of the time. And it's tough at festivals, I'll say that. But I just think that it's fun, it's different, and it's challenging in a way, but also it makes things a lot more simple logistically for touring. And we're a couple, so it just makes everything so much easier for us to just remain as a 2-piece. So
yeah,
kind of like our shtick. And I think some people will be like, oh, you got a bass player. But then at the same time, people are always like, I'd love to be your bass player. I'm like, yeah, I know. Leave me alone.
I'm really curious about your thoughts on playing with Marcia as well, because I just got to see your band twice in Winnipeg, and Marcia is like a vocal powerhouse, a drumming powerhouse, and you two complement each other very well. And I'm wondering what you enjoy about working with her musically.
You know, that's a very good question. I actually don't think I've been asked that before. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think my favorite part is our the differences in what music we grew up with and how that kind of bleeds together and creates our sound.
Mm-hmm.
I was more into punk rock than she was. And when we met, I almost feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I kind of forced it on her every once in a while. And being like, we're starting this band and we're going to be a punk band now. And this is what you need to drum like this. Like I was very, very specific. I still am very specific. She's going to listen to this and be laughing. So I think.
Hi, Marcia.
Yes. Hi, Marcia. So I think just our influences and her influences help us write better songs. And I think that might be the best part of us working together, is complement each other in a songwriting sense.
What did she grow up listening to? Because whenever I watch her, I don't get the impression that she was like, you know, like listening to like No Use for a Name her whole life. Does that make sense? Like she's got a really unique style, and it really reminds me a lot of like Janet from Sleater-Kinney, and her style playing. And so I'm wondering if you have any like knowledge of what was inspiring her growing up while she was learning to play and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. Like she did listen to a lot of country music and a lot of like pop music, like Cher and stuff like that, kind of diva stuff, but also just classic rock. Like her mom and dad are both super into classic rock, like Van Morrison, and was a big thing in the house. And so I feel like it's more rock based as opposed to the punk rock side of things, more like rock pop. And sure. I think that adds to a bit of the uniqueness, because she's not like a punk rock style drummer, right? Just like the super fast stuff. We don't have songs like that because that's not the style of drum she plays. But that's often how I'll try to write a song. So then we have to kind of split the difference on what I'm writing and what I'm hearing versus what her skill set is and what she wants to play. So it makes it challenging, but also, I'm not just like, play the drums like this. And then she's like, that's what every fucking song sounds like. Can I not do it like this? So it took me a few years to kind of like settle back and be like, it's both of us working together. It's not just me writing the songs and you supporting me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now it's like very much a 50-50 effort between the two of us, which I think helps.
One of my favorite things about her playing is her slow tempo stuff in between the faster parts, because she's never doing like a really straightforward, super slow beat. She's got this really unique style of having these like sort of off tempo styles of playing, and then going into the fast stuff and then going back to the stuff that's like unpredictable. So her slower playing on the slower tempo parts is unpredictable and interesting, and to watch, especially live. That was one of my favorite things about watching her play.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when we're in the studio, she's very much or not just in the studio, but when we're writing songs, she doesn't reuse drum fills ever. Like that's one thing. It's so there's always something different in it because she doesn't want to just reuse the same fill that she's used before. So it makes it interesting.
Awesome. Well, I have a good segue from that, because when I talked to JP Peters from Private Ear Recording about recording Propagandy, we talked to him for the Negretto episode, and it was such a fabulous conversation because he talked about watching Jord record drums for 2 LPs and how Jord doesn't recycle fills. And so that really connects with what you're saying about Marcia. And now I'm like, ooh, I wonder if JP has a role in this as well. And so I know JP did your records, Don't Worry and Feeling Disconnected. And I know that he also did a live in studio session of Dig Myself Out and Jealous Ones. And I'm wondering, like, did I get everything? I'm wondering, I'd love to know some stories about working with JP, recording at Private Ear locally in Winnipeg, and just anything that springs to mind about your relationship with JP and the studio.
Well, I love that this is all about Propagandy, even though we're talking about us, because it does all tie in so nicely.
It does, yeah.
He's recorded everything that we've done except for the Waiting EP that we just released, the 2 acoustic songs, and that I recorded that from home. Otherwise, he's done everything.
He did Cities Away also?
He did Cities Away, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I was looking at all the Discogs information and like the production credits like aren't on a couple of the records. So I was trying to like dig into this a little bit, and I was like, oh man, I can't find everything. So yeah, I'm glad you clarify that.
Okay, yeah, I should go on and update that. So I found him when we moved back to Winnipeg, I guess, because Marcia is originally from Winnipeg. I'm not. We moved here in 2012, I think it was. And we were looking, or maybe 2013, we were looking to record an album, like our first record. So even though we started 10 years ago, we didn't really know what our plan was until after we released our first record in 2014. So I was just looking through CD liner notes and looking at where records I liked were recorded. Nice. And so Propagandy's, I think it was
Failed States.
Failed States. Yeah. So that one was recorded. I was like, John Paul Peters, wrote his name down, Googled him. I was like, oh shit, this guy lives in Winnipeg. So sent him, I don't even know what I sent him, a demo of something. I don't know how we made a demo because we didn't have any way to do that. Anyways, we sent him something and he was into it. And so that was how we got together with him, was from that Failed States album. And he just becomes part of your team in whatever role you want him to take on. So he can be as involved as you want him, or just hitting record, and making it sound good. And so from the top, it was our first proper experience in the studio. So this would have been in 2014, I believe. And we're like, yeah, we don't really know what we want to do. We're a 2-piece, but we don't want to record it as a 2-piece because we hadn't really figured out our sound yet. I hadn't even quite figured out my voice yet at that time. And he just kind of helped us through it. He's like, awesome. Just let me know when I'm going overboard with too much production or too much instrumentation, and we'll take it back. So that happened a couple times, just with he's like, how about this? And would come up with some just insane part where it's cool, but it's too far, because his brain is, as you know now, just goes, right? So for that first record, it was kind of just experimenting. We used all of our own gear, like my own amps, everything, Marcia's snare, just all of our own stuff, just to be comfortable. And then moving forward to Feeling Disconnected, we decided we wanted to do it as just a 2-piece and have it sound more like the live performance. Because that's what we've been getting feedback from people on, was like, you should do a live album. And we're like, we're not going to do a live album. We're barely even a band. And so we're like, why don't we record our next record to sound a little bit more like a live album? So it was more live off the floor. There was no bass on that. It was just a little more, I don't know, it was a little more laid back in a sense, and raw, I suppose. And then moving into Don't Worry, again, we worked with him and decided to split the difference on the 2 records. And obviously at this time, it had been 6 years or so of us playing shows nonstop and writing and just getting way better at our instruments and singing and performing and being in the studio. And so we split the difference between the 2 records. And once again, he was like, hell yeah, I'm totally down. So again, I'll be involved as much as you want me to be, but we're going to mess around with so many guitar pedals. We're going to try so many different amps and tones and guitars. We just went nuts. Right. And he just becomes part of part of the band for the duration of being in the studio. And he's just such a positive guy for the most part, that he just like, he makes it a good experience because his name is on it and he wants it to be as good as it can be. So yeah, he's just, and he seems like he's legit a fan of our band and does like our songs. So he has lots to say, lots to add, but doesn't take offense when we turn down ideas that he comes up with, which I think is super important.
I love it. Well, hi JP and Vanessa. I love that conversation that I had with JP. He was like taking me around. He had me like live on a Zoom call, but on his phone. So he was walking me around the studio, showing me all the places in the studio and everything. And I was just like totally, my brain was just exploding with nerdiness. And so I'm glad that JP was able to come up, and I'm glad that you enjoy working with him, because like I'd imagine that over the course of the years, like whenever you come in knowing what to expect with JP, like you hit the ground running with ideas like a lot faster because there's less of a sussing out between you and like personality wise. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. Have you watched our documentary that we put out on the making of Don't Worry?
Oh, I don't think I have. Holy
okay,
smokes.
I was wondering if you'd come across that or not. So we put that out last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic in April, because we were going to do a screening and stuff, but that got canceled. So we had our friend come in the studio with us just to record the process, and we didn't have an idea of what we were using the footage for. I just love music documentaries and behind the scenes studio stuff. So we're like, let's just get you in the studio and then decide what we're going to do with the footage later. And so our buddy Marty was there like 24/7 with us, just filming nonstop. We were mic'd up and everything. So yes, so that gives you like a really good story behind the record specifically, but also just our relationship with each other in the band and JP as well. Because I mentioned this in the documentary, which is why I brought it up, because we kind of speak this language, right? As I'm sure a lot of artists and producers do when they're in the studio. You just say certain things that click with the other person. You know exactly what they mean by, just this kind of obscure language that you use with each other. And so, like you said, when you work with someone enough, it becomes easier. It's never easy because it's, quite the process to record an album, but you get to admit some of that initial awkwardness, or like, I don't know, we've just recorded with him. So now I don't know what it'll be like when we record with someone else.
Where can people find that documentary if they want to go and check that out? Because everybody here is interested in the work of JP because we all listen to Propagandies. So like that will be relevant to anybody listening to watch your film as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on YouTube, and the documentary is called Sorry I'm a Mess. The Making of Don't Worry. So yeah, you can just search that on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is all up to date and everything. So you just go there and you can find it. It's 45 minutes and it features 4 tracks, like 4 feature tracks is how we ended up working the documentary together, which kind of goes through the process of us recording and then also us about to start a tour like 2 days after we finished recording. But of none of those songs, because all those songs we're recording are new and our tour is for all of our old songs. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of, that's the angle we took in it. And it worked because the footage there is real. I'm very stoked on it. It's cool. It's a cool documentary to have, for us ourselves even.
Well, I'm going to have a movie night, and I'm embarrassed that I'm going into an interview with you and I didn't watch your film, but I do listen to the records and I have seen you live. So I'm like 2 out of 3 here.
Absolutely.
So you just had a really wonderful experience basically a month ago today. I was up in Winnipeg for the 3 Propagandy shows at the newly renovated Park Theater in town. And Mobina Galore was announced when Propagandy's tour started that you would be one of the openers along with Choke on the Winnipeg date, which was originally only October 9th, but then wound up being expanded to the 8th, 9th, and 10th whenever the rest of the Western Canada dates were postponed. And so I want to know the story of this weekend from your point of view. I'm wondering, how did you hear about these shows coming together? And I want to hear about the planning process. So let's start there to get the ball rolling.
Sure. And honestly, I am like I'm still on a high from that weekend. Like
Me too.
that was like the opening weekend of the park. And there was no option but for that venue to open up. Like that was just that was it. And that's why, as you mentioned in the episode of you going to Winnipeg, there was no booze. It just, not everything could get lined up. And if that was the one thing, fuck it, that's fine, you know?
Yep.
And so the funny thing about us getting on those shows is that Propagandy and the Park Theater, Corey and Eric, were completely like aware that we were playing in the show, but we had absolutely no idea. We hadn't even been asked. We weren't contacted whatsoever. And I think Eric was at our place for dinner or something one night, and I can't remember how it came up, but he's like, oh, well, you don't have any shows except for October 9th. And I was like, what? I was like, what show on October 9th? And he's like, oh. And I was like, what's going on here? And then he's like, you haven't talked to Corey? I was like, no, I haven't. Corey hasn't emailed me or texted me or anything. And so it went on for like quite a while. And then I think within like 24 hours, I convinced him to tell me what this apparent show we were playing that we didn't know about was. And so he mentioned his Propagandy. I was like, well, hell yeah, obviously we're going to play this show. And we were meant to have been in Germany like a couple days after the show, which again, the tour got postponed. So the timing was perfect. So I think maybe like a week or so later, finally it was confirmed that we were never even asked to play the show. It was like there was just miscommunication within the band. I think Jord was maybe meant to have messaged us and he didn't, but he probably thought Corey thought Eric was. And so either way, we got added to the shows kind of without us even knowing, but we would have said yes anyway. So that was a hilarious start to all of this, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. And like, there were so many shows that were meant to have happened at the park before this weekend that unfortunately got canceled. So this ended up being like that first weekend back for so many people at like full capacity, you know? And so we just couldn't wait. We're like, okay, we got to start practicing immediately. And I mean, as an opening band, you're only playing 30 minutes. So it's not that big of a deal. And I mean, in hindsight, we should have played 2 fully different sets, but we played the same set both nights, which is fine.
Yeah. And it was great both nights.
Yeah, I had a better, so we played Saturday night and Sunday night. Saturday night was the first night I was like, this is so good. I was just so pumped on the set. I'll always mess up something and it's not a big deal. But Saturday night, I was so stoked. And I think Sunday was Marcia's preferred show. So it's always interesting. You know, it's tough to both have the same favorite night. But I mean, where do I start? Like, we were just so pumped. And we live a block and a half away from the Park Theater.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. So we drove our gear a block and a half, parked at the back of the venue, and didn't pick up the van for like 3 days. I don't know if we're supposed to like keep our van parked back there for that long, seeing as we live so close. But we just kind of started partying, you know what I mean? Like, and not just necessarily in the drinking sense, because you couldn't drink at the venue, but we live so close to home. We're like, okay, a couple beers beforehand, head over to Leopold's next door, have a beer, and chatted with Marcia's sister for a while, who brought up to us, she asked us our set list, and she brought up, you're not playing Fade Away. That's your best song. You have to play Fade Away. And we're like, oh shit, you're right. We're not playing Fade Away, but we only have 30 minutes. Like, so we picked these other 9 songs. So we ended up doing a poll on Instagram, and it was like 90% of the people, there's like 150 people that voted or something, that yes, you have to play that song. So we did that at soundcheck on Saturday night, having not, been practicing at all. And it was great. So it's kind of fun that we had that random interaction with her at Leopold's to quickly last minute switch up the set, which is kind of fun, like you think you're ready, and then all of a sudden there's a curveball, and you got to roll
challenge.
Like that's live music, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was kind of fun. So anyways, we had our set together, and we just had the best time running into so many friends, but everyone was totally masked, as you'd mentioned as well, because there was no drinking. And if you're drinking, you don't have to have your mask on, blah, blah, blah. And so everyone had their mask on, and it was almost hard to recognize people who are like your good buddies that you haven't seen in a year and a half. It's like, is that? And then like a quick pull down of the mask, and it's like, hey, it is you,
Yeah.
So it's just like, it was just nothing but positive vibes that whole time, like all weekend. And then Saturday, and we kept popping back home in between sets and stuff, just to have a beer, a glass of wine or whatever. And on Sunday, it was pretty funny. We woke up and our friends were meant to be in the States for a football game or something, but with like COVID testing and all this, it was like way too expensive. So they just did a staycation.
Yeah.
So we're like, come over to our place for breakfast. And they were in like full vacation mode. And so they brought over some mimosas and breakfast stuff and made us breakfast sandwiches. And they're just sitting around watching football, drinking beers. I was like, damn, like this is all I want to do is just be like, but I got to play a show in a few hours. Like, so, but we had such a fun time, you know, just hanging out with a couple buddies and talking to each other about our weekends. And yeah, so we did have a few beers before that show and then, you know, head back to the venue, and our friends stayed at our house. So we hopped back and forth and played a round of darts at some point before Propagandy set, had a couple beers, run back to the venue. So it was like, it can't be better than living a block and a half away from the Park Theater.
Why didn't Mobina Galore play on Friday? I know there was a band from Saskatoon called Weapons, and I'm wondering why the bill wasn't the same all 3 nights.
Yeah. So what happened there is, with the prop shows originally being like whatever the Sunday, Saturday, this band had a hold at the venue. And so I think they just decided to combine the shows because, you know, they had a hold on the venue. So you don't want to, you know, screw anyone over, and genre wise, it was a bit different, but still I feel like close enough.
I thought they were great.
Yeah. So I think that was the main reason. I could be wrong, but I do believe that's why that was the case. And Propagandy too, they often get different locals to open their shows. They'll always do like the 2 or 3 shows because they always sell out, and they'll get different openers at each show. So we were obviously super pumped that they wanted us to play both nights, because yeah, there's nothing like playing the same venue 2 nights in a row, especially when it's open for Propagandy.
I loved it. Did you, what did you think about their sets, and just any memories that stand out to you, whether it's like watching them or like conversing with them or like hanging out or around the venue? Was there anything like that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I just love watching them just slay so hard, you know? Yeah. And I also love when bands kind of mess up a little bit, or like Chris came out and like the first thing he said, he's like, oh man, I'm nervous.
Yeah, that was great.
I just love that honesty and like truth to a live show, because as amazingly talented as these musicians are, and as so many are, there's going to come a time where like, you know, the song ends and they're like, oof, that didn't go as planned or whatever. And I just love those moments in shows. And also, I don't know if you stood at the top of the stair, like the ladies' washroom is up those stairs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you stood up them at all, but it's like the best view of all of the venue.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah, because you're like just that slightly but elevated. And so I just stood there a couple times throughout the evening and just watched like a sea of people just having what I can only imagine to be the best time ever. So those are some moments that stick out for me for sure. But it's just so fun watching them just thrash around on stage.
All 3 nights I was on the floor. On the first night, I was in front of Chris. On the second night, I was in front of Sulin. And on the third night, I was back right in front of Barney at the sound booth. So I had like a cornered triangulation approach to my 3 nights of watching the set, because I really wanted a different experience each night. And every night was different, and it was really cool to feel that way. One of my favorite moments was they closed with Comply Resist on the 3rd night. And whenever I interviewed Jord, he said that was one of the hardest songs for him to play. And the fact that he was like, Chris said before the last song, he goes, oh, we got one more, Jord. And Jord's like moaning back behind his drum set into the microphone. And then they made him play Comply Resist. And all I thought was, when I interviewed Jord said this is the hardest song for him to play. And Chris is making him play it as the closer on night 3 in a row. And I was like, poor Jord, they really just are punking him so hard right now. And it was just, I loved it. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff too. And you just do it. You're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. And it was Jord's birthday on the second night too. So that was really fun. There was a nice little celebration. I loved that.
Yeah.
Do you have I know that you've opened for Propagandy other times as well. And I think you opened up a 2019 show or, didn't you open up like Sue Lynn's first show or something like that? Like, I'm curious about other times that you've worked with them in the past.
The first show we played with them was that show. I wrote this down actually because I couldn't remember when it was. That was in 2015, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
Right? So like that seems crazy. I feel like that's wrong, but I looked it up, so it must be right. Because yeah, we played her first show with Propagandy here in Winnipeg, and that was our first time playing with them as well. So it's just like double epic right there, you know. It was, and that was my first time seeing them live as well. So it was just like everything was just so perfect. And that we'd only just released Cities Away a year ago. Actually, it was the year anniversary of releasing Cities Away. So it was like, wow, this could not be a better way to celebrate our record, but also just play this show with Prop and Sue Lynn's first show. Yeah, it was crazy. We're like, how did we get so lucky to be playing the show? And then since we've played with them a few other times, all over actually, like we've done a couple festivals with them, Manchester Punk Festival, Obanus Festival in Zurich, Edmonton, Calgary dates, and then I think like another Winnipeg show maybe. So yeah, it's been awesome. It's been really cool. But I feel like now we've played with them too many times, people are going to be like, okay, give me a shot, you know. I kind of feel a little selfish.
Well, when we started the show and I started sort of befriending them a little bit and collaborating with them for episodes on the podcast, I said to Sue Lynn, what are some bands and some people in bands that you know that you've worked with that you definitely think that we should talk to for the podcast? And Sue Lynn's first answer was Mobina Galore in Winnipeg. So I actually heard about your band from Sue Lynn directly right when we started the podcast. And so that's why I know about Mobina Galore is Sue Lynn is the first person who told me about your band. So hello, Sue Lynn. Thank you for that.
That is very cool. That's cool to know.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite Propagandy record?
I was thinking about that today while I was working. I deliver donuts, and so I was just listening to. Well, I had time to listen to like 3 or 4 of them, and it's so tough. But I kind of obviously talking to you. I want to say Failed States because it just brings back lots of memories, especially of like us starting out as a band, like heading into the studio, the story that I told you before. So I think that record, they're
awesome.
just different vibes, and they just get better and better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
While still having like favorite songs from older albums and so on. But yeah. I'll say States.
Do you have 3 top songs that you would like to say as you can proclaim them as your favorite all-time Propagandy songs? You can also say right now these are my favorites, but ask me in a week and they'll be different. So I'm curious about some top tunes from you.
Sure. Okay. Well, I will have to say Dear Coach's Corner. That song I just love it. It just gives me so much energy. And it's the song that I know the most lyrics to because their songs are very lyrically challenging at times, obviously. And that one I know like pretty much every word. So that's a super fun one to see live. I also really like Negretto, and I love Todd's, like all of Todd's songs, because it's just a bit of a different vibe, and it always breaks down to like a slow kind of chill vibe, but it's always really heavy. And that song specifically, like the lyrics are just like, it makes you want to cry when you're listening to it, especially seeing that song live was just very powerful. And then another thing I was thinking of today is just all their opening tracks on their records are just so killer. Like they just create such a vibe. So yeah, for Victory Lap is just like, that song just gets me fired up. So those would be my 3 right now.
Awesome. I love that. So you mentioned seeing Negretto live. I was completely floored emotionally during those 3 nights when they played Negretto at the Park Theater. And seeing the slow part where it's just Todd singing by himself, have you ever seen someone wasting away? Like the look on his face, I mean, it was just like an agonizing thing where it's like, it looks like at any given moment, he's about to have a breakdown in front of like 800 people. And I'm just like, my God, this just got 10 times more intense than listening to it on the record, because I had never seen any Victory Lap songs live. I had never seen Propagandy with Sue Lynn. I had never seen Victory Lap songs performed live. So that was like one of the main reasons why I was so happy that the set was so Victory Lap heavy. They played like 8 songs from Victory Lap that weekend, is because I had never seen any of those tunes. And Negretto just was like a devastating knockout blow for me. Just like watching Todd sing that slow part before the fast part comes in, it just like messed me up big time.
Oh yeah. Like it gives me goosebumps just talking about it right now. Cause I can see that song being a song that you just don't really want to play live.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see it live, it's like, it was just so powerful. Yeah. That was incredible.
Absolutely. Well, Jenna, what are some next steps for your band, Mobina Galore, as we ease our way into a sort of kind of maybe reopening of our planet?
Well, yes, the slow reopening has begun. I feel very positive about it. We have our 2022 is actually shaping up quite nicely. We're already maxed out at local shows, which is great. And we've got our German tour in April, May that has been postponed for the 3rd time now, that I'm very confident will happen. And then we haven't announced all of that yet, but then we'll be back in Germany again in October. We have something that just came up that's not confirmed, nor can I say anything about it, that is going to be epic early next year. Yeah, it's like things are just happening. And in the meantime, we really need to work on writing some new songs. We've got bits and pieces of several new songs, but nothing has actually been arranged in the jam room or anything. So that is something that we really need to do. But honestly, since this Propagandy weekend, we've just been like, life has just been so fun. And it, like, everything is just like, I just can't find time to like just relax and get back into writing music. I'm just fired up. Like, it's just been such a good time since those shows, just other things happening as well in Riverview here. And like, yeah, I needed to snow. Actually, I needed to snow and I needed to get cold so that I stay at home more.
And you lock down and then you get the guitar out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So real quick, I'm just curious. Can you tell me a little bit about because you mentioned you're going to Germany. You mentioned Germany several times. Is there like a special sort of fan base for your band in Germany that's like kind of like a unique little base around for you guys?
Yeah. Our biggest market is Germany. When we released Cities Away, we ended up signing with like handshake deal signing with a label called Gunner Records. I don't know if you'd seen that on Discogs at all. Yeah. So they picked up our Cities Away album in 2015. And interestingly enough, that first tour we were on there is when we were in at our tour manager, our buddy's place in Berlin at the time. And that's when we got the email about being asked to play this Propagandy show. And we were like, holy fuck. So we were on our first Europe tour on our new label in Germany, and yeah, got asked to play this prop show. So it's, yeah. And so Gunner Records picked us up in 2015, and we've been going there. We go there about twice a year, obviously with the exclusion of the last couple of years. And he's got us on tours with Against Me because Gunnar used to drive for Against Me back in the day. He drove a tour or something. And there's actually a photo of him and a story about him in Laura Jane Grace's book, Tranny. So yeah, so like we owe so much to Gunnar, and he helped us build our audience, but people just loved us. People loved us right away. And we have really awesome shows in Germany. So yeah, we do focus a lot of our attention overseas.
I'm sure it's just a tragedy to have to go to Germany twice a year.
I know it's brutal. We go enough now that there's like our favorite places where we need to go get food, or like cities that you need to book a day off before or after, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll book ourselves WestJet Plus maybe on the way home, just like, we deserve it. We deserve it. So yeah, we have a great time when we go overseas.
That makes me so happy. Well, Jenna, where can people find all of your stuff? Where would you direct their attention if they want to know more?
We have a pretty weird band name. And so when you Google us, we're the only thing that pops up. I'm the one who runs everything, like the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media and stuff. I do all of our merch. So if you wanted to reach out to us, everything comes to me. We get a lot of messages from people, which is awesome. And often it's like, hey, I'm sending you this message. You're probably never going to see it, but I just wanted to let you know that I love your band. And then I always write back. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, what's up? It's me. And then they're like, oh my God. So some people like, I love interacting with fans and finding out how people heard about us. I find that really interesting as well. So yeah, just Google us. We got tons of music videos. We've got lots of live stuff out there. During the pandemic, I did a bunch of tutorials. I'm just remembering this now, a bunch of tutorials for songs. Like I would just put it out there. Like, what song do you want me to show you how to play? And our songs are quite simple, but like, still, if you're learning how to play guitar, maybe the strumming pattern is like a little different. It's no Propagandy, like sheet music or anything like that. I'm not even going to bother.
No
so
way.
Yeah, we got lots of stuff on YouTube and Spotify, and I make lots of playlists on Spotify as well of like lots of different genres of music that I like. So yeah, just come say hi wherever, order some merch and see what's up.
Jenna, thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandy, and today a podcast also about Mobina Galore. It's just been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. I feel like we could chat forever.